Our last speaker is Dr. Helena Popovic. Dr. Helena is a medical doctor, leading authority on how to improve brain function, an international speaker, and a best-selling author. For Dr. Helena, promoting vibrant physical and mental health is not just her profession, it's her passion, her purpose, and her personal way of life. Helena is unique in bringing the latest discoveries in brain science to the field of weight management, and she demonstrates how great health is possible in a time-poor world. Helena is the author of 2 books, In Search of My Father, Dementia is No Match for a Daughter's Determination, and Neuroslimming, Let Your Brain Change Your Body. Her philosophy is that education is more powerful than medication, and she believes in slow aging despite fast living. Dr. Helena, though, is not known for her wine knowledge. After the death of her mum, who was a very keen wine buff, she decided to pull out the collection and ask a friend whether indeed there was anything worth drinking in this collection. Her friend was heard to be said, "You have no idea about wine, do you?" as she pulls out a 1986 Grange and puts it on the table as if it's just a bottle of Plonk. Will you please welcome Dr. Helena to the stage?
Thank you. Aristotle taught, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. This principle underpins the functioning of our brain. Our brain is the result of what we repeatedly do. That 1.4 kilogram wrinkled lump of grey matter that sits inside your head can actually change its very own structure with each different activity it performs. Now just stop and think about that for a moment. The brain can change itself. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that the brain can grow new cells. It can make new connections between existing cells. It can establish whole new circuits. The brain can even change which cells perform which functions. And we call this remarkable ability of the brain to change itself neuroplasticity. Can I have a show of hands just to see how many of you actually come across that term before? Fabulous. Well, neuroplasticity comes from 2 words. Neuron meaning brain cell, and plastic, malleable or able to be moulded. And what neuroplasticity really means is that every single one of us influences how our own brain operates and develops throughout our entire life. And this actually flies in the face of what we believe for most of human history. How many of you have heard, and this is what I was taught in medical school almost 30 years ago, and I know looking at me you're probably thinking 3 years ago, but it's been 30, I was taught that the brain is the only organ that can't regenerate or repair itself. Have you heard that once you have that alcohol binge and destroy brain cells, you'll never get them back? Well, I'm certainly not here to encourage the alcohol binge. However, we actually make about 5,000 new brain cells every day of our lives, when we're young, when we're old, and every age in between. But here's the critical factor. It's our day-to-day choices and habits that determine how well those brain cells function. And everything that I say to you today comes from 2 contexts. And the real clincher here is it means that we can boost the functioning of our brain and we can significantly reduce our risk of dementia. And everything I say to you comes from 2 contexts, from my professional role as a doctor and from my personal life as the carer for my now 86-year-old father who's had dementia for over 10 years. And he's shown me more than anyone else that it's never too late to make a positive difference. At the age of 80, I bought him his first ever gym membership. I certainly didn't buy him the silver tracksuit. I have no idea where that came from. And even well into almost, he's now 86, he continues to improve his fitness and to build muscle. So never think it's too late. And although I'm here to show you how you can improve the functioning of your brain here and now, the bonus is everything I say today will also go a long way to reducing your risk of dementia in the future. Now, we've always known that a healthy body means a healthy mind, but the reverse is equally true. A healthy mind creates a healthy body. A healthy mind means that we can think better, work better, create better, relate better, and achieve far more than we ever thought possible. Now, we can't increase the number of hours in our day, that's obvious, but we can increase our effectiveness in every hour. And that is actually the key to gaining a competitive edge. That is how we can get that winning advantage, because rundown is the new normal. So even though we live in a frantic, fast-paced, furious world, how are we going to find time to fit in something that's, some more habits, because what I'd really like to give to you today is 10 brain boosters, 10 things that will significantly improve the functioning of your brain today and in the future. Where do we have time to do all that? Simple. We simply make it into a habit so that you do it on autopilot. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you here struggle to find time to plan when you're going to brush your teeth? I'm assuming it's something that most of you do. Well, let's make it easier. Have a shower. Is that something that you struggle with? Why is it that brushing our teeth, having a shower, are a no-brainer and a no-drainer? Because they're a habit. We do them on autopilot. There's actually 3 reasons. Number 1, you're sold on the value of brushing your teeth and having a shower. Number 2, it's something you've been doing forever, so you don't even think about it. And number 3, it doesn't take a big chunk of your day. And I get that the brain boosters that I'm going to give you today, the 10 things that will profoundly change your life, have to fulfill those 3 criteria. They have to make a significant positive difference, not just to your business, but to your personal life, and help you get the balance right. Secondly, you have to be able to do them on autopilot. And thirdly, they can't take longer than brushing your teeth. So that is my promise for you today. And it all starts by understanding that the brain behaves like a muscle. The more actively we engage our brains, the more different ways we use our brains, the bigger, the more complex, and the more effective they can become. Now here's something fascinating. The brains of wild animals are 15 to 30% larger than the brains of their tame domestic counterparts. Why? What is it about being wild that boosts their brains? And does it apply to humans? It certainly does, even if probably not in that case. So to kick things off, please turn to the person sitting next to you and give them your best smile. Lovely. Now, did you happen to notice who raised their eyebrows when they smiled? Lovely. Well, you might want to pay attention next time, because researchers found if you raise your eyebrows when you smile, the other person will think you look more intelligent than if you hadn't raised your eyebrows. So I've been practicing. But even without the eyebrow raising, whenever we smile, other people will rate us as looking younger, smarter, and more attractive. So now that everyone in the room thinks everyone else in the room looks hot and intelligent, please give each other a genuine, heartfelt compliment. And if you're sitting there thinking, but the person next to me doesn't know me, don't worry, something pleasant about you has struck them, or they wouldn't be sitting next to you. 10 seconds each, just give each other a compliment. One compliment will do. Now, what was that all about? Why did I ask you to give each other a compliment? Well, the first thing to note about the brain is that it loves suspense. Suspense has the effect of giving our brain cells a shake and saying, wake up, something really exciting is about to happen. So I'm not going to tell you why you did that until later. In order to keep your brain cells in suspense and not alert for the answer, and therefore paying full attention to everything I'm saying, which I know you would anyway, because these 10 brain boosters, each of which takes less time than it does to brush your teeth, will significantly transform your personal and business lives. So let's get started. Number 1 brain booster. And this actually ties in with what a few of the other speakers have already said. Number 1, get an attitude. What do I mean by that? Neuroscientists asked an interesting question. Is there an attitude, a prevailing way of thinking that actually boosts brain function? And they found that there was. And it was to adopt a can-do attitude. And they found a very simple way to get people to do this was to get them to cut that 4-letter word out of their vocabulary. And that 4-letter word, of course, is can't, C-A-N'-T. So in your forum groups, not only now you're not allowed to say, I'm too busy, you're also not allowed to say, I can't. Why? Stay with me on this, because it sounds really simplistic. It's that neuroscientists have discovered that the human brain is really sensitive and responsive to language. So everything we say to ourselves, whether it's out loud or even silently inside our heads, has the effect of giving our brain cells a set of instructions. So if I predetermine that I can't do something, I literally close off my ability to see how it can be done. I just won't even notice when an opportunity presents itself that would help me solve the problem. And you might have actually experienced this. Have you ever walked in on someone that's really flustered and is saying, oh, I just don't know where to start with this. There is no solution here. And you say, you have a little think about it. And you go, well, have you tried this? And they go, oh my God, how did you think of that? And I've been racking my brains over this for days. It's because we work ourselves into a state of mind blindness when we start to believe something's not possible. Because we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. We see through the filter of our self-talk, our expectations, our past experiences. So monitor your self-talk. Don't always believe everything that you think. And my father used to tell me a story that illustrated this. He came from Serbia and he used to spend time on his grandfather's farm. And one day, the whole family were out at the markets when a delivery of chickens arrived at their door. And there was no one home, so they just left the chickens in a flimsy old crate. By the time the family got home, all the chickens had escaped. Not a feather left. So they spent the whole afternoon racing around town looking for these chickens. And his grandfather got really angry, so he rings the chicken supplier and he says, listen, mate, whatever the Serbian equivalent of listen, mate would have been. He says, don't do something so irresponsible again. How could you leave livestock at our front door? All the chickens have escaped. We've wasted the whole afternoon looking for them and we've only managed to retrieve 11 of them. And the chicken supplier said, well, that's not too bad because we only delivered 6. So if you drop your preconceived ideas about the limits of what's possible, you will find that you can achieve so much more. Now, I can see some of you looking at me quizzically thinking, look, that's all very well, but it leaves a vacuum in my vocabulary. Like, what am I really supposed to say then during those frustrating moments when things aren't going to plan? Brings us to the second brain booster. Get curious. Albert Einstein said, I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. And what that means in this context is that from now on, whenever you feel like saying the word can't, swap it for the word how. Traditional positive thinking has you stamping your fist on the table saying, I can do this, I can do this. But it doesn't work unless you actually believe that you can do it in the first place. But what does work is what neuroscientists call shifting linguistic categories. Going from a statement, I can't do this, to a question, how can I do this? So your most powerful word is how. Because the first thing it does is it shifts our focus. You're now giving your brain the message, the solution is out there, I simply have to find it. They've actually measured how people's performance, creativity, problem-solving skills go up when you simply get them to ask the how question. And they did a study on a whole group of people. They randomly assigned them into one of 2 rooms and they were all given a series of 10 problems to solve, exactly the same. Except one group had to write down 10 times before they started, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. The other group wrote down 10 times, how will I do this, or how can I do this, how can I solve this? And then they got them to do the problems. And every time, even though they mixed up the groups, one set of statements or questions always outperformed the other. Which one did better? The how can I group. So start to make questions, one of your habits. So you see, so far I haven't taken up any more of your time. You just have to observe what you're thinking, stop saying can't and just replace it with the word how. Now this is such an important concept. I invite you to turn to the person sitting next to you again. If they gave you a dud compliment before, turn to the person on your other side and share with them something in your business or your life that you've thought I can't, and it's not just the word can't, it's all those euphemisms for can't. It's impossible, it's all too hard. Anything in your life that you've engaged in non-productive self-talk, make a promise that you'll now change your language around that. Admit what it is and just say, yep, I commit now to asking how will I questions. How can I solve this? Not, I can't get through to him, how will I get through to him? Have a little share about that just for a moment. Feel free to continue that conversation over lunch, and at next year's Family Business Conference Forum, hunt that person down and check on their progress. If they've changed their language, they will have changed their life. Your third brain booster. Can I invite you all to stand up for a moment, please? I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. Yes? But what does that actually mean? Australians are the world's leading researchers on the effects of prolonged sitting. And what we found is that people who sit for more than 11 hours a day, now I don't know your individual businesses, and for some of you you're on your feet all day, but I actually have colleagues, doctors, lawyers, accountants, that sit easily for 11 hours a day. They drive 1 hour to work. They sit at their desk for 8 or 9 hours. They drive another hour home. That's an easy 10 hours. Then they're so tired because they've been sitting all day, they've got to sit in front of the telly for another hour. Now, that person is at 40% increased risk of early death from cancer, heart disease, stroke, complications of diabetes, compared to somebody who only sits 4 hours a day. Those who sit for more than 8 hours a day have a 15% increased risk of early death compared to 4 hours a day. Now, why is sitting so hazardous for our health? Firstly, the bad news is, even if you flog yourself at the gym for an hour a day, it's not going to counteract the negative effects of prolonged sitting. But the good news is, all you need to do to break that is to stand up for 2 minutes every 20 minutes. And it doesn't have to be dead time, because I've now got accountants that go, oh my God, but every 6 minutes is a billable unit. I can't waste... It doesn't have to be dead time. You get one of those COS sit-stand platforms. Thank you very much, COS, if there's anyone in here. They're fantastic. And you can get one for each one of your employees, and you just raise it up and down, and you can continue to type, you can continue to work. They're not called mobile phones for nothing. So it doesn't have to be dead time, even if you want that 2 minutes to be productive. But the key is our brainwaves slow down, our fat-producing enzymes shut down. Sitting has nothing going for it for prolonged periods of time. Our productivity and our health just plummet. And a lot of people have heard, the sitting is the new smoking, but they don't know how to implement it. And the biggest barrier I hear is cultural. Yeah, but if I stand up every 20, 30 minutes, everyone's going to think I'm slacking off. So it really needs to be the decision makers, the people in major roles need to acknowledge that this actually boosts productivity on every level and apart from improving people's health. Thank you. You've stood for your 2 minutes. You can sit down again. So beware the chair. So that was number 3. Number 4, can I have a show of hands? How many of you regularly exercise of a morning? Terrific. So the rest of you obviously exercise in the evening. That's fine too. The thing to note about the brain and exercise is that our brain operates at its absolute best in that first hour after we engage in any sort of physical exercise. So before a brainstorming session, difficult decision, IKEA furniture assembly, move for 20 to 30 minutes and you'll perform measurably better. Quite apart from the fact that we've known that physical exercise, improves our heart, reduces our risk of most major diseases, we've only recently discovered that it's critical to optimal brain function. Because whenever we move our bodies, our brain starts to produce a chemical called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotropic factor. And this chemical acts like a fertiliser for brain cells and actually stimulates the growth of new brain cells and new connections between existing brain cells. And study after study around the world, Japan's really good at this. They've done studies on sticking people on treadmills for 10 to 20 minutes, then getting them to do problem solving, increases dramatically. The Germans did studies that found that just 20 minutes of running around or sitting on a bike improved language learning by 20%. It really measurably improves brain function. Now, I promise it would have to take less time than brushing your teeth. So here's the brilliant news. In the last 5 years, we've actually discovered that 30 seconds of exercise, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds can make a positive difference. Who knows what HIIT stands for? HIIT. That's right, high intensity interval training. If you just break up your day with 3 or 4 30-second hits, you will improve your health and you will improve your productivity measurably. Particularly if you're a diabetic, if you do 30 seconds of fast running on the spot, or if you've got an exercise bike, hop on an exercise bike for 30 seconds, your blood sugar levels will be considerably better for the whole day. And in fact, if you're pre-diabetic, my pre-diabetic patients, if they do this, they never have to get on medication. They actually stabilise their blood sugar levels. It's that important and that powerful. So, just for you to get a feel for it, I'm going to invite you all to stand up one more time. And we're going to do a 30-second hit so you can see just how possible and easy it is. Now, if you haven't exercised for a long time, just go as hard as you need. It's only going to be 30 seconds. Run as fast as you can on the spot. And I promise, only 30 seconds, but it's going to feel like the longest 30 seconds of the day. Let's go now. Go. That was 10. That was your 30 seconds. Now, well done. You can sit down. Now that takes less time than brushing your teeth. And if you had to pick between the two, I'd pick this. So we've also found that physical exercise is as powerful as Prozac in the treatment of depression. It's hard when someone's depressed to actually get them motivated to move, but it actually, again, it can get people off medication. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a big, long session. Okay, our next brain booster is to get out into nature. Nature is such a powerful healer and balancer. There's a new disorder in the psychiatric textbooks. Have you heard of NDD? Nature Deficit Disorder. It would be hilarious if it wasn't true. But people who don't spend hardly any time in nature have a higher risk of anxiety, depression, and stress-related disorders. We've actually found that one of the best things to relieve stress in the moment is if you're just feeling really wired, one, you can do a HIIT, but secondly, you can just walk out into nature and immediately it calms down our brainwaves. It actually has a dual effect. If you're tired and just not focused or concentrating, actually walking out into nature for a couple of minutes and taking slow, deep breaths will actually reinvigorate you. And conversely, if you're feeling really anxious and wired, a walk in nature will actually calm you down. If you're ever in hospital, make sure you ask for a room with a view of nature, because hospital patients who look out onto nature, they need fewer painkillers, they recover more quickly, they get out of hospital sooner. Similarly, if you ever find yourself in prison, make sure you ask for a cell. You never know, a cell with a view of nature, because prisoners who look out onto nature actually are better behaved, get less sick, get out of prison sooner. So it's enormously powerful. We know this instinctively. When we visit people in hospital, what do we tend to take them? Flowers. You know, they've even found if you have a bunch of flowers or a pot plant on your desk, and every so often you just turn your gaze from the computer screen to the live flower, even that has the effect of keeping us, rejuvenated and concentrating. It also helps if you get a bit of sunshine, because it's a good source of vitamin D. So 10 minutes in the middle of the day without sunscreen, you get your vitamin D as well, and that also improves cognition and concentration. Number 6, brain booster. Now we could spend the whole half hour on each of them, but so just understand, I'm just giving you the snapshot, is to get off refined sugar. The World Health Organization has actually stipulated a safe level of sugar consumption, just like they have a safe level of alcohol consumption. And I'm not talking about the natural sugar in fruit and vegetables. If you don't eat any processed food, you don't have to listen to the following. But if you eat anything out of a packet or a box or a tin, make sure you read the label, because a safe level of sugar consumption for a child now is no more than 4 teaspoons a day, for a woman 6 teaspoons, and for a man 9 teaspoons. And if you don't think this frazzles your brain, it actually does. We found studies that particularly the fructose component of sugar, but sucrose is glucose fructose. So anything with sugar in it is going to have fructose in it for the most part. It actually changes the expression of genes in our brain, interferes with communication between brain cells, and over the long run significantly increases our risk of both diabetes and dementia, because sugar is very inflammatory. Now, as I said, I'm not saying become a teetotaler, just keep it to that safe level. So when you're reading the back of a pack of something, 1 teaspoon is 4 grams. They're not going to give you the teaspoons. So whatever it is, say your breakfast cereal has 20 grams of sugar per serving. Divide that by 4, that's 5 teaspoons. That's more than your child should be having, and just about all that a woman should be having a day. So be careful of the hidden sugars. I know you know there's sugar in soft drinks, ice cream, chocolate, and we tend to moderate how much of that we eat. But on top of that, we don't realise how much sugar is in tomato sauce, seemingly healthy sugar-free yogurts. Just because it's sugar-free doesn't mean they haven't added fruit or dried fruit or something that will still boost the sugar content. So it's really important that we just be aware that over time, today, by the time an average child is 8 years old, they've had more sugar than the average person did in their whole lifetime a century ago. So that's the issue, it's volume. It's not that no, don't touch any sugar, that's unrealistic, but it's just bring it back to a manageable level, just like alcohol. So just while we're on that subject, a little quick quiz to boost your brain. If Bob has 26 candy bars and he eats 29, what does he have now? Diabetes, excellent. Seventh brain booster. I know you know this, but it's a reminder. People underestimate how significantly this impacts their performance. Get a regular good night's sleep. And this was really brought home to me. This is from the font of knowledge, the Courier Mail. I come from the Gold Coast, forgive me. And it was an article, Fatigued Cop Lost His Guns. Now, this was a highly trained professional policeman who's been on the job for years. Coming home one night, he was so tired, he was going to get on a train, and he was waiting for the train. He left a bag of guns on the train station, got on the train, went home. Now, luckily, the citizen who found them reported it and didn't take off with them. But the article was all about, this was the effect of fatigue. He'd done 10 straight shifts of 12 hours. Now, I simply want to ask you, what would be your equivalent of 10 straight shifts for 12 hours? And what would be your equivalent in your business of forgetting a bag of guns at the train station? Because the average Australian apparently accumulates about 2 weeks of sleep loss a year because of feeling pressured to stay available and get the job done regardless. After 17 hours of wakefulness, that's 7 a.m. to midnight, our brain operates as though we had a blood alcohol reading of 0.05%. That's above the legal limit for driving. The average person needs 7 to 9 hours for optimal functioning. It changes at various times in our lives, and when you've got toddlers, it's hard. But as a general rule, try to aim for 7 to 9 hours a night. Now, 3% of the population do have the short sleep gene, which means you can function on less. 30% of the population think they have the short sleep gene. But when they're tested, they definitely don't. So related to this, and one other thing just to be aware of, between about 2 and 4 in the afternoon, we're biologically programmed to have a nap. So it just means maybe you don't want to take a nap, but just recognise that that time of the afternoon you're going to be your least productive. So don't schedule your most complex tasks between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. You won't be as sharp as you are at other times in the day. Brain booster number 8. Now, I've spent all afternoon saying, get out there, get excited, get stimulated. I'm now going to tell you to get still, because stilling the mind is as important and powerful as stimulating the mind. What do I mean by stilling the mind? Quieting your thoughts, pressing the pause button on your mind chatter. Do you know what I mean by mind chatter? It's that little voice that starts talking the moment you wake up and doesn't stop till you get to sleep. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have a voice inside my head, that's the voice inside your head. And we need to switch that off sometimes. Now, how do we do that? Obviously, formal meditation is one way, and if you have time to go out and meditate 20, 30 minutes a day, fantastic. But I'm going to show you, just like the physical hit, you can have a mental hit, a 30-second way, a 30-second meditative moment. And this too will rejuvenate you, will sharpen your concentration, and will lift your energy levels if you need to. Also, if you're stressed, it'll calm you down. Once again, it has a dual function. So what I'd like you to do is to get the palm of your hand and look at the palm of your hand as though you've never seen it before. Now, you can focus on one point or scan your whole hand. The important thing is try not to have a conversation in your head about what you're seeing. So if you've just seen a really short lifeline, don't say to yourself, I could die soon. Just let that go and look, and I'll keep quiet while you're looking. Now close your eyes and listen to the sound of my bell. And when the sound subsides, just listen to the silence or any surrounding sounds. Now, keeping your eyes closed, become aware of everything your body is touching. Become aware of the clothes against your skin, the chair against your back, the shoes around your feet. Scan your body from top to toe and become aware of everything you're touching. Now bring your attention to your breathing. Take a slow, deep, conscious breath all the way in. Feel your lungs expand and slowly all the way out. Follow your breath one more time, slowly in and slowly out. After one more breath, slowly open your eyes. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you found for at least some of that time you realise you weren't thinking because you were looking or listening or feeling or breathing? Terrific. That's what I mean by getting still. So simple yet so powerful. Because what you did was a bit like this. Imagine your mind as this bottle of water and your thoughts as the grains of sand. Now, as we go through our life, our thoughts through our day are flying around all day, every day. And the more stressed we are and the more we multitask, the more frantically our thoughts are flying and the more busy and stressed and tired we feel and the more likely we are to make mistakes. But if you allow your thoughts to settle, as you did just then, suddenly we've got some clarity. Suddenly when there's calmness in our mind, we can see so much more clearly. We are so much more effective. We're so much more likely to come to solutions to problems. So it's a very powerful thing to do. And if you struggle to fall asleep, pick one of those activities as well and just focus on your breathing or listening or what you're feeling. Any time of the day you need that rejuvenation. It's better than a cup of coffee. Okay, principle number 9. This is also something I could have spent the whole half hour on, is to get grateful. When you're brushing your teeth, when you're in your shower, reflect to yourself, what are all the things that you're profoundly grateful for in your business, in your life, in your family? My father was lovely the other day. I've sort of started him on a whole range of activities to try and keep his brain functioning despite the dementia. And jigsaws was something that I started him and didn't like at the start, but now he loves them. And he was so excited. He came in the other day and he said, guess what? I finished that last jigsaw puzzle all by myself. And it took me less than 2 hours. And on the side of the box, it says 4 to 5 years. Can be very switched on sometimes. So I'd just like you to now turn to the person sitting next to you and just share with them the 2 things that immediately spring to mind that you're profoundly grateful for in your personal, professional life. That's something else you can add to your lunchtime conversation. Now, what's the power of gratitude? It's not just that we feel good in the moment, which we do, but it actually changes our brain chemistry. When you express gratitude, you start to release oxytocin. That's the opposite chemical to cortisol, which is your stress hormone. Dopamine, noradrenaline, and acetylcholine. And that cocktail of chemicals actually helps us focus and activates more creative regions of the brain. So they've actually found that when people write down, spend 5 to 10 minutes reflecting on what they're grateful for, and then they're given problems to solve, they actually do a better job than if they just launch straight into it. And it's another way of making people feel safe. And, maybe in the morning, when you're sitting around the breakfast table, express gratitude with your family, because the other magic of gratitude is once we start to focus on things we're grateful for, we continue to notice more and more things that we're grateful for in our lives, and it just expands and spreads. And it's beautiful if there's a culture of gratitude in the workplace. It's got to be genuine, obviously, but where people are acknowledged, because sometimes we acknowledge people in our heads, but we actually forget to tell them. And that is just, it connects people in such a beautiful way. And the final brain booster, and this is so relevant to family businesses, is to get together. And what I mean by that, it was brought home to me again, another article in the Courier Mail this week. Hey Dad, take it easier. And it looked at 3,000 Australian families, and those families in which the dads spent a considerable amount of time away from the home, they asked the kids how they felt about it. And like 99% of the kids said, look, we understand, we're not resentful, we're fine with Dad, going to work, and we understand. They asked about dads, not mums. They said, we're fine, we get it. But when they looked at their behaviour, the kids, particularly the boys, where they didn't see much of their dads, they were more disengaged at school. They had fewer friends and they tended to be, muck up more. And it was an unconscious thing, even though intellectually the kids actually got it. Now, I know that we are all time poor. So what I'd like to say here is that make the moments with your family count. When you're at home, be at home. Because I look after Dad. I'm his carer 24/7. We live together. But I know sometimes I'm at home, but I'm not really there. I'm really thinking about the next conference I've got to go to, what I've got to do, what I've got to pack, and I'm not there with him. And I can see he's the canary in the coal mine. When I'm not connecting to him really, when I'm not totally present for him, his functioning goes down. He kind of mucks up. He doesn't want to have dinner. But when I'm totally present, we're really connected. So even if you can't increase the time that you spend with your family, make that time really, really count and be totally present, because the greatest gift we can give to anyone in our lives, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, is when we're with them, to really be with them. Not to have a conversation in our head, just to listen without judgment. Because not disagreeing and not judging doesn't mean we agree. What we're communicating is, I value what you have to say. I understand that's your experience, even if it's not my experience. But that openness, that creates safety and connection. And on a final point, meaningful relationships is the biggest thing that prevents dementia later in life. There was a 75-year Harvard study where they followed young men from the time they were in Harvard University all the way to old age. And the original researchers even died before all the results came through, but they started to see a pattern. And they wanted to know, it was the biggest predictor of a healthy, happy, fulfilling, meaningful life. And they asked them at the start, and they said, making lots of money, really being good in my career, exercise, good eating. It wasn't any of those things. What was the number one predictor of a strong immune system? Happiness, relationships, meaningful relationships. Because they found that the more arguments in a family, the lower their immune system, the more likely they're actually to get sick. So, it's just so important that we remain connected to the people we love. So my overriding message is that we're all born with a far more capable, adaptable, opportunistic brain than we ever imagined. We're not passive victims of our genes. It really is our moment-to-moment choices and habits that determine how well our brain cells function, that determine our health, our longevity, and our overall quality of life. So I encourage you to get wild, to get excited, to get smart, and of course, to get my books. Yep.
There you go. Any questions for Dr. Helena Popovic? What have you got? Anything? Up
Yes.
the back. Somebody cheered at the back before about some of the data you were sharing. They're going, yes, I'm okay.
I have a serious issue in today's world with mobile phones and the disconnect that it gives us. Even got a thing from the old man now. I even talk to people if I see a parent with a young child on their phone for endless. It must be making your life as well.
Absolutely, and it is changing our brains. Our attention spans are definitely getting shorter. I'm not saying it's all for the worse, but some of the things we've noticed is being on mobile phones, it rouses us. It makes it harder to fall asleep because the light emitted from devices turns off our melatonin production. So if you've got a device close to before you go to sleep, you'll find it longer to fall asleep. And it also means our conversations change. Everything happens in short chunks, and it shifts values. So it's a big topic.
And it's changed our language.
It has changed our language, absolutely.
As well. So it's, we talk about, sound bits.
Yes, that's right.
And hacks.
Presidents manage like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other questions?
I've got a question. With your dad, have you found with exercise and stimulation, cognitive stimulation, really good nutrition, that his dementia's slowed down at all?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Without a doubt.
No, that's okay. It's just I'm in aged care and I'm right across this. I just wanted to get some real approval. Thank you.
Yes.
Anthea.
You mentioned earlier those with toddlers in the room, the 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day is difficult to achieve. I have one of those. Maybe not everyone in the room does, but for anyone with kids, is it then, what's your next best option? Is it to get 8 hours but broken hours? Is it to get 5 solid hours? Like, if you had a choice, what's your next best option that you should be working towards?
However, they've actually done studies. So yes, you can break, if you have to break it up, then even breaking it up certainly helps. And people are different. Taking a nap in the afternoon, they've now decided, all NASA astronauts take a 20-minute nap in the afternoon, boosts their productivity 33%, and it means they can go longer. So if you can fit in a nap. But also those meditative moments, I would suggest in that case, because that's probably one of the simplest things you can do, more meditative moments for you throughout the day. And they will be a little bit like micro naps. So the best you can with the circumstances that you're in. Yes?
So my question's about how can we actually take some of this to our boardroom meetings, and how do we get into the management meetings that we've all attend without sounding crazy? And have you done any research in regards to transferring this into business?
Finding the key decision maker. For instance, the Commonwealth Bank in Sydney has implemented a standing culture. And that's because somebody wanted it to improve productivity, they'd read somewhere. And they've now sort of spreading it through the whole organisation because one person that had the power thought it was a good idea and implemented it, and people liked it. So it's getting to the ear of the right person, and I guess, or getting enough people on the ground to agree that this is something that we all do.
Yeah, sitting in a boardroom for 8 hours, once a month is not a healthy environment.
No. Perhaps put forward, what about meetings on the move? And if you like, I can email you evidence, but it's not hard to find. Googling, hazards of prolonged sitting, there's paper after paper after paper. So perhaps just putting it forward as a suggestion. I went to the family business, conference, and I heard this doctor say it was a good idea. So, yeah, just starting the conversation. You yourself possibly just doing it, say starting to get one of those stand-up desks, and people sort of looking at you, and you won't have to say anything. People will go, you're looking really bright, you're looking sharp, how come you're so energetic all day? And you go, well, because I've just learnt a few things. This is what I'm doing, possibly.
And it's a conscious decision, right? You've
Yes.
got to be making these conscious decisions all the time.
I think it's like people say, how do you know when somebody's practicing self-care? Really looking at, they will light up a room when they walk into it. How do you know when they're not? They light up a room when they walk out of it. And it's about, if you're doing things for you, you'll stand out and people will ask you, what are you doing?
Will you please thank Dr. Helena